The film opens with several men in protective biohazard suits. They place an unusual crate before reporting to Dr. Julia Goldstein. Dr. Goldstein grins as she observes live footage of a peculiar opening on the ocean floor that resembles a portal. Astrobiologist Jim Peters from Miskatonic University enters his office to find Dr. Goldstein waiting for him. Initially indifferent to Julia's association with Pickman Corporation, Jim's interest peaks when he learns the company is selecting candidates for an expedition. Dr. Goldstein details their 7-year research in the Antarctic and Southern Atlantic Oceans, highlighting a mapped trench on the Antarctic continental shelf and the ocean's deepest point at 37,000 feet. She then presents Jim with footage of a portal-like opening on the ocean floor and explains that the mission's objective is to explore this entry and investigate its contents. Intrigued by the potentially man-made aspect of the portal, Jim agrees to participate. Jim attends a briefing where he meets his new team. Dr. Goldstein introduces the members: Gordon Atkins, head of the Manned Submersible Lab at London's Royal Society; Christine Harris, a marine biologist from the European Marine Biology Symposium; Joe Meeker, the Safety and Communication Officer; and Hank O'Connell, the Chief Engineer for Providence 3, a deep-diving submersible. Providence 3 is constructed with specialized foam to withstand the immense pressure at 37,000 feet and beyond. Christine voices concerns about the risks of exploring the opening, but Dr. Goldstein and Hank reassure her that Providence 3 is equipped for the mission and that success is anticipated. Suddenly, Jed Pickman interjects from the back of the room, delivering a speech about the importance of exploring the portal, suggesting it could be their most significant discovery. After the briefing, the team shares a meal and gets to know one another. They discuss their mission, with Christine mentioning the extreme water pressure and Gordon expressing ongoing concerns about the risks. Everyone agrees that it's a unique opportunity. When Christine steps away, Jim follows to check on her. Christine reveals that she recognizes Jim because of his father, who vanished after a significant discovery on a Pickman Corporation expedition. She also shares about her son Sam, shows him a photo, and expresses her anxiety about potentially not returning to see her son grow up. 2 months later, the team has completed their training and is set for the expedition. Pickman decides to accompany them to witness what lies beneath the portal-like opening. Dr. Goldstein ensures everything is in order as the team prepares. Jim and Christine prepare to descend, while Gordon announces he is opening the vent. The submersible experiences a brief shake but quickly stabilizes. Jim readies himself to dive into the ocean. Hank reminds him of the procedure, emphasizing that he will be alone out there and urging him to recall his training. As they approach the portal, Christine excitedly calls Jim's attention. Their descent to 37,000 feet is successful. The team gathers around, awed by the portal, which appears man-made but remains enigmatic due to its depth. Gordon cautiously navigates Providence 3 into the portal when a sudden tremor causes the submersible to shut down. They lose contact with Dr. Goldstein's team on the surface. Christine grows anxious as the submersible continues to descend. Unexpectedly, the systems restart as if nothing had occurred. Rachel informs them that communication with the surface has been lost for 3 hours. The team is stunned, feeling as though only minutes have passed. Hank checks the life support systems and finds they have depleted by about 3 hours, increasing their concern. Before them, an enormous ancient ruin comes into view. They describe the dilapidated stone structures, which appear man-made to Rachel and her team, who are unable to see them due to static interference. The discovery of these structures sparks confusion and suspicion, as it seems improbable that life could have existed at such a depth. They notice a colossal and unusual object on the seabed. Upon closer inspection, they are stunned to discover what appears to be a life form. Christine remarks that it looks like the remains of a creature entombed under centuries of sediment. Dr. Goldstein instructs Jim to approach and collect tissue samples using the rover. Jim prepares to enter the ocean, and Christine asks if he'll be okay. He reassures her before heading out, while the rest of the team continues their observations from inside Providence 3. Jim draws nearer to the organism and collects a tissue sample as the others watch. Joe questions how long it could have been dead. Suddenly, movement is detected on the rover's rear cameras, and their radar picks up a massive life form. Christine instructs Gordon to call Jim back to Providence 3, but Joe argues that they need the sample. As Jim completes the sample collection, Gordon urges him to return to the submersible, but they lose signal. Fear grips them as the enormous creature with wings rises to its full height, and emits an eerie, otherworldly cry. Gordon requests permission to abort, but Dr. Goldstein, driven by the need for the tissue sample, refuses. In a panic, Gordon transfers control to Joe, who opts to lower the submersible to expedite Jim's return. Meanwhile, Pickman encounters an apparition of a non-human figure and exclaims that it's a divine encounter, just as he had hoped. Christine rushes to the pressure dock, instructing Hank to fill it with water for Jim's re-entry. As the colossal creature extends towards the submersible, Gordon is forced to reverse abruptly, causing a jolt that throws Christine into the pressure dock. Before Gordon can open the outer doors to let Jim's rover in, Hank warns him to halt to avoid blasting Christine into the ocean. Gordon opens the inner doors instead, and Joe helps pull Christine out of the water-filled pressure dock. Joe attempts to assist Christine but finds she's unresponsive, leading them to believe she has died. Hank finds Pickman on the floor and tries to revive him. Hank checks the flooded bunk rooms and advises Gordon to drop weights before the water pulls them down. Since Gordon is still in the pressure dock, he waits 5 seconds before releasing the weights. Hank has sealed the corridor, but cannot close the second door, so he is unable to stop the water from flooding in or escape himself. He pleads with Pickman to open the door, but Pickman, speaking incoherently, just watches as Hank succumbs to drowning. Jim returns to Providence 3 and panics upon seeing Christine's lifeless body. Jim performs CPR. After a tense moment, Christine coughs up water, and Jim holds her in a relieved embrace. The submersible successfully exits the ancient ruin and begins its ascent to the surface. As they talk, the pressure dock begins to move. It turns out to be the box containing the tissue sample. Pickman insists that the sample be taken to the lab, but Jim proposes sealing it in the pressure lockout of concern for its potential danger. Nonetheless, Pickman is adamant about bringing it to the lab. Christine and Jim decide to supervise to ensure the sample remains contained. As they observe, a slimy tentacle emerges from the sample. Jim suggests freezing it, while Christine demands that the lab be sealed. Joe contacts Dr. Goldstein, who warns him that the sample must reach the surface. Dr. Goldstein plans to take the sample for herself, and Joe is complicit in this scheme. Pickman overhears the conversation, and upon hearing this, enters the lab, strips off his clothes, and begins rubbing his body with the sample's slime. Meanwhile, as Jim and Christine are changing, Jim suddenly becomes frantic, revealing that the encounter in the ancient ruin is causing him to hallucinate. Christine holds his face, comforting him until he calms down. As they finish dressing, they hear Gordon scream. They rush to investigate and find the lab in disarray. Christine accidentally touches some of the slime and hurriedly returns to Jim. At that moment, Pickman appears, striking a bizarre pose and emitting an inhuman screech before collapsing into the pressure dock. Christine and Jim attempt to open the pressure dock to rescue him, but Joe intervenes at gunpoint. He reveals that Pickman already knows what they are dealing with, having spent years researching the ancient ruins before their expedition. Their true goal isn't exploration, but obtaining a living organism sample for profit. Christine attempts to reason with Joe, explaining that the organism not only exists physically, but also exerts a peculiar psychological influence on the team. Joe refuses to listen. Meanwhile, Christine and Jim set out to find Gordon. As they approach, they hear Gordon retching. When they find him, they realize he has been affected by the sample, speaking incoherently and gazing at them oddly. Then, in a voice that sounds eerily like Jim's father, Gordon addresses Jim as son. Gordon attacks Jim, who struggles to defend himself before being knocked out. Gordon then wreaks havoc, destroying everything around him, which causes the submersible to malfunction and lose contact with the DP control. Joe, witnessing the destruction caused by Gordon, confronts him. Seeing Gordon's insanity, Joe shoots and kills him. Christine attempts to intervene, but Joe declares that the situation is now about survival. Joe plans to take the rover and leave Christine and Jim behind. However, when Joe turns away, Christine grabs an axe and strikes his hand, causing him to drop the gun, which falls near Jim. Christine fights Joe and ultimately stabs his leg with the axe before rushing to Jim, who has just regained consciousness. Christine opens the pressure dock and boards the rover. However, Jim resolves to destroy it completely, so he takes the gun and heads to the lab. After sticking to his plan and destroying the sample, Jim encounters the apparition that has possessed Pickman. He then hurries back to the pressure dock and tells Christine to leave without him, explaining that one of them must stay behind to seal the pressure dock. Suddenly, Joe appears wielding the axe. Jim lures Joe away from the pressure dock and shoots him. To his horror, tentacles emerge from Joe's body, and Jim shoots them before hastening back to the pressure dock. Moments later, Jim sees his father's apparition, warning him that the craft will implode upon opening the door and asking Jim to join him. During the last moments of the film, Christine is rescued by Pickman Corporation. Days later, she wakes up in a hospital and confronts Dr. Goldstein about the deaths of her teammates. Christine accuses Pickman Corporation of knowingly sending the team into danger. As Christine speaks, she is suddenly overcome by excruciating pain in her stomach. It dawns on her that she had come into contact with the sample slime while aboard Providence 3, leading to her possession as well. In a horrifying turn of events, tentacles burst forth from her stomach, enveloping Dr. Goldstein in the contaminated blood as well.